We have next great session for today, and it is about scaling to new markets with Apple Search Ads. I think it's a big topic for everyone because you have target markets for sure, and but you want to expand your efforts. I'm sure about that too. So please join me in welcoming Faheem Sayat, director at App Samurai. Welcome, Faheem. Faheem actually brings over 6 years of experience in both startup that we have discussed and corporate ecosystems. And at App Samurai, he's leading the global expansion of two cutting-edge MarTech products designed to empower mobile app publishers in engaging and retaining their users. Hi, Faheem.
Hey,
Thank you so
Lina.
much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I've seen it has been a very fruitful morning for me in New York, but I'm hoping the audience is enjoying as well. So, as Lina mentioned, the idea of scaling to a new market, be it a startup, be it a platform, be it any digital product or physical product, it's always a hype scenario because sometimes new markets bring new opportunities. And of course, with Apple Search Ads, the possibilities are quite endless. So I'll just shed some light on top of what my peers in the industry have been sharing for the past few minutes as well. So, all right, I'm just trying to get the tracker moving. All right, there it is. So the idea for the new markets has always been very interesting because they come at a certain lower cost of acquisition compared to the tier one countries. I mean, the markets that I'll focus are the ones that have been heavily growing in the past few years, which has been very active on the radar of the advertisers, marketers, investors as an ecosystem. That would be the Middle East, North African market and the Asia Pacific market. So we'll kind of go over how could we explore the possible potentials of these new markets and what would be the possible benefits of targeting these new regions for your Apple Search Ad campaign, of course, on top of what you are already be doing in your tier one countries across the Western Hemisphere. So just a few stats because numbers always are promising and based on stats, the marketers are always in a position to better make decisions. So as you can see over the past year that the data has come in, the iOS market share has been on a significant rise across all the 4 quarters of 23. What idea is given here is usually the Asian market was heavily dominated by Android back in the day, of course, but with times and changing and of course a younger generation that came up with it, the adoption for iOS has increased all in all. So it's almost as high as 20% for high-end smartphone users. By high-end, I mean the top of the tier Apple devices, which basically means this is an audience that is in favor of making their life easier, are ready to spend, let's say, on digital apps, on a digital economy, which is a very promising target for any growing market. Same thing for the Middle East. Of course, the leading markets being Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, that are the leading markets, especially when it comes to the iOS penetration rate. Almost 46% of the users are in the Middle East or are their high-end iPhone devices. Hence, by default, this audience is more skewed towards the idea of favoring the Apple devices, which in turn gives you a broad spectrum of what could be the possibilities that you could explore with all of your campaigns. Now, of course, there are a lot of reasons on why should a certain brand enter or why should a certain ad campaign be more focused in this, but I'll kind of cover a few generic ideas that should give us some idea as well. One thing that I did mention was these are high population density markets, be it the Asian market or the Middle Eastern market. These are heavily growing, both in terms of the adoption rate of technology and, of course, in terms of the density of population as well. Now, compared to the tier one market, something that is a bit unique here is you have a lot of cultural and economic factors that can act as an advantage. For example, in the tier one countries, right, we usually have back to school markets, Black Friday seasons, Christmas seasons, and all these seasons. In the similar aspect for Middle Eastern and Asian markets, we do have their own unique cultural and economic factors that can be used in a certain way. It could be an e-commerce app, it could be a game, it could be a delivery app. Across these genres, you will find many different seasonal activities which could be used as a unique way to make them feel at home. Because the more cultures that you have playing in a certain market, the more broad spectrum of audience you have to basically send a hook with a different kind of hooks, which could basically lure into it as well. The curiosity of the users is very, very high. As I mentioned, a lot of these users is a young audience. The youths in this region are heavy tech adopters. And especially when the skew is towards high-end mobile devices, by default, they are willing to spend more to make their life more and more convenient as well. Hence, they are relying heavily on technology to basically stay in touch. It could be navigating around the city, an app like Kafu that basically delivers fuel to your doorstep. Let's say, you are at home, you see you're running out of fuel, your car is low on diesel or petrol. You can actually use the app and can basically get fuel delivered to your doorstep. Just an example of how different economies, different cultures might be using technologies in unique manners and basically giving marketers, advertisers, and basically investors and startups new ideas how they could expand their footprint just because they are so heavily reliant on this tech frame that is being going on. This basically comes up with the idea that the purchase power is significantly higher. As you can see, the population, the average median of the population that is in the Middle Eastern market is skewing towards the young millennials, of course, which are below the age of 30. And the data is where we see that all of these in-app purchases relying on tech. It could be in-app purchase inside a game. It could be online shopping, food delivery, online fuel order, etc. Right? All of these are heavily impacted by the skew of the audience, which is a very strong signal that the young audience is somebody that is unique, that is something that is very, very open to testing out new products, new apps, new games, and new tech in general. This basically gives you an idea on how you could shift your focus to get the attention of these young generation of users with interactive creatives. And of course, the more the creativity, the more you have a vision of how you could encompass them as well. And in general, the frequency of purchase is significantly higher rather than comparatively to the older generation. For example, the idea again is being the young audience is something that was brought up in an era where in these growing markets, fintech took a recent boom. The idea of Apple Pay and these kind of simple tap to pay mechanisms was something that was very highly adopted, which in return gives them a way to quickly finish the checkout process without having to delve deeper into it as well. And of course, with the idea of combining all these different cultures together, that is where we would see that the moment marketing, an idea of how could a certain season be skewed for this certain user as well, gives you ample opportunities to execute these ideas as well. They have their own local festivals, their own local holiday seasons, their own local cyber deals, for example. These basically are where these brands could culturally embrace these things and basically make the user feel that they are more close to home, and hence basically increase the overall LTV and brand loyalty. Because once you have a user that is sticking back to your brand, by default you would see the whole loop of where you have them as a loyal user, all the way from going down to engaging with your ads, engaging with your app, the word of mouth, and of course down the line with your deep funnel events like committing purchases, subscription events for a streaming app. Streaming apps are something that are very, very massive in these markets, for example. So this way you have seen apps like foreign apps, for example, often had an issue competing with the local streaming apps like MBC Shahid or Stars Play, which had a very strong local presence. Although the content might be global, but for these global content, these creatives of targeting a user and showing that creative in the local native language, just to appease to the culture, is something that has worked very, very well as well. And I'll just quickly go over a couple of ideas on, what are the possible strategies for success. Again, this is a very, very broad spectrum. So every market can have their own unique setup, can have their own unique tweaks that could possibly be done to ensure that you might be doing the same campaign across the board, across different geos, but just certain tweaks and trips could basically help you save budgets, help you gather that audience at a more intense pace, and in general, give you the idea that you might be looking for. So the idea of the local market trends is something that is very, very easy to track these days. Snapchat, for example, is one of the leading apps that are used basically, and these kind of apps often highlight festivals, often highlight different local activities that the users are trending into. What are the market trends? The way a certain well-known market might be publishing their content on Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, that could be a unique inspiration on, let's say a foreign entity that is trying to scale in these markets. How could you better please to these users? And since the cultures are very diverse, you don't need to worry about just one set of language. Often you can convince the users with a simple English language as well within the trend. But often, of course, localization is something that will play a heavy part as well. And that's where all these different placements that you can see on your Apple Search Ads campaigns are what you can use effectively as well. For example, the Today tab is one of the leading creative that would get the most eyes right now. Of course, now in this kind of aspect, you basically have a way where you can expose your brand, although your CTRs, your clicks might be a bit less, but you have at least succeeded in exposing the user to your Today tab placement. Now, even if that placement is something that is very, very localized with a local theme, with a local market trend, by default, they have a vision of your app in their brain embedded. And down the line with your search result ads or your product ad pages, you can actually convince them for a conversion point based on these local market trends. The next is the language localization. So of course, App Store App Store Connect does enable you to set up these custom product pages, which can be completely localized. Again, the idea of it being whenever a young user, of course, kind of see into the aspect of what is it something that I can try here for new. By default, the human emotion quickly attaches to something that is in your local or your native language. Although the app might be completely in English, the app might be completely in any language, because again, English has a very high adoption rate. But just these interactive ways of kind of catching a user's hook, making them feel that you're looking out for them, kind of making them try to make them loyal to you, right? These kind of customized landing pages are something that we have seen work very well for the clients as well. Now they can be spread across in multiple different aspects. You could either use it for your classical campaigns or in variation with your Today tabs, tab destination, etc. So the idea of kind of converting a user with these unique hooks that feel localized is one of the strong capabilities that I highly recommend the marketers to use in as well. And of course, creatives, there is no end to creativity. As Lena just mentioned that, although AI is here, it won't take over as much as humans, because the creative aspect of humans in some point is still heartwarming. People still feel connected when they see a video, when they see an image, right? Because they feel like that video or that image or that creative is talking to them. It could be a simple font, it could be a simple color, it could be the design of, let's say, in the Middle East, in markets, for example, where I spent many years, a simple idea of kind of making sure that it looks like calligraphic is a unique way, because those calligraphies, those who might have seen those portraits, they act wonderfully on apps. For example, streaming apps love to present a unique vibe. So the moment you read that font, even if it's in English, it basically enables the user to see that, okay, this is something that could be very interesting and very localized for me, for instance. And the next, of course, effective use of keywords. So keywords, again, is a very, very commonly generic. Everybody has their own approach to kind of leveraging keywords. Every brand might have their own keyword, for instance. But basically what you could do in this aspect is how could you use different kind of brand keywords, kind of keep it long tail. And of course, if it's seasonal, you can do them multilingual. A user might be bilingual, for example, because multiple cultures, multiple keywords, and all of this data is openly available in the public markets. So this would be a very interesting way for you to actually effectively use keywords without burning a lot of your budgets. Again, maintaining a negative keyword list never hurts. We have seen it work very well for brands. Brands often have their own negative keyword list. So when you exclude these kind of lists, of course, when you proceed to do a broad campaign like a search match campaign with your optimized keyword list and your negative keyword list, you would see much more earmarked results as well. And of course, kind of the moment you have these aspects of it, you can easily plan on using your budgets and optimization strategies in their own unique manner as well. All of it comes down to the way you commit your reporting. Of course, every keyword, every ad group, on how is it performing, right? The idea of using these impressions or these new dashboards, these view throughs, click throughs, which idea works well for which aspect is something that you could leverage to ensure that you are not burning a lot of budgets. Use a nice creative, break it down into an ad group and optimize it from there. This way you can actually not worry much about the budgeting cut as well. And of course, kind of just to wrap up, before I wrap up, just a quick overview on what could these do as well. In terms of Max, a leading e-commerce brand, for example, you had seen an 11% higher CR with localized keywords. The app was in English, everything was in English, but with localized keywords, localized creatives, the client did see a higher 11% CR in the Middle Eastern market. and of course, a similar localized approach that led a real money gaming app to basically reduce their customer acquisition cost. Again, because once a brand is exposed to these localized keywords, the hook is there, the view has been enabled, the impression has been captured. Now it's all about how you can convert them on the long tail side of things. So that's a quick summary of tricks and ideas. Of course, I'm more than happy to answer, or you can reach out anytime. But I hope I was able to shed some light on how you could possibly expand your horizons and things keep things in mind while basically helping you scale your Apple Search Ad campaigns.
Faheem, you definitely coped with this task. You delivered really insightful tips, actionable tips, like strategies for success and case studies. Huge thanks to you for joining us today.